Hi, me again. And we've got an interesting one for Excel today. And this relates to a question I had from a delegate on a recent course. And they have some data here, which is transactional data. And they have a date. And they have a transactional sale value. What they actually want is they want the sum of all those values. But you'll notice that it's not by month that they want this split out. It's by AP, or accounting period. And I've got a list of the accounting periods here, and the way they're broken down is some of them are 4 weeks, some of them are 5 weeks, and by the end of the year it evens out to be 12 periods. But like I say, some of these are 4 weeks, some of them are 5 weeks. They all start on a Saturday and finish on a Friday. So we want some way in our data of actually putting in an extra column, like a helper column, telling us which AP this date or this transaction falls within, and that will then let us to do a simple sum ifs and work it out from there. So let's go back to our data. Let's have a look and see how we can do this. So we're going to just type in AP here, and because my data is an actual table, what that does is add an extra column into the table, or an extra field of data within that table. Now in here I'm going to use a rather clever array formula, which lets me figure out where it is within the APs. Now the reason I'm using an array is because what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at just that one date there, and I'm going to say, is that number bigger than this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, or this one? And I'm going to ask it 12 questions in one go, and it's going to give me 12 answers in one go. Now because it can't actually put 12 separate items of data in a single cell, what it's going to do is just give me back the first one, which is fine, because I'll show you how we can then see all of the others. So the simple question I'm going to make is, first of all, I'm going to put it as a statement. So I'm going to say equals, that cell there is greater than or equal to, and I come over here to my AP list and select all of the start dates. Now if I just press enter there, it'll tell me false for all of them. And what I actually want to do is do Control Shift and enter, or CSE, and this puts those curly brackets around the formula in the formula bar. Now that lets me know that it's gone in as an array. Now the other way of knowing is, if I come over here, remember I said this was only going to show me the very first of the answers, and all of these dates, yes, they are greater than the first day of my first AP. Yes, of course they are. However, if I go into there and press F9 to see the details, I can see that it's actually given me 12 different answers. Now at the moment those answers are trues and falses, and if I go lower down, F9, you'll see true, 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 true. So it's actually in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this one is in AP 9. Let's have a look at that. So the 22nd of the 12th, 22nd of the 12th will fall in here, which is AP 9. So that is working. But as I said, this is coming up and showing me words rather than numbers. I want to see the number 9 in this column. And the way I can do that is if I can convert the trues into ones and the falses into zeros and then add them all together, what that will do is it will give me the number 9, because I have 9 trues in here. Okay, we'll go back up to the top, and the reason we're working on the top one is then it fills down in the table automatically. So the way I'm going to do this is wrap all of this in some brackets, just to tell Excel I want you to complete all of that, and then once you've done it and you've got the true, I then want you to multiply that by 1. And again, Control Shift Enter. Now all of these have become 1s, but again, if I dig into it, use the F9, I can see that it's come up as 1s and 0s. All I'm seeing here is the answer to the first of those 12 answers. If I come down to a lower down one, F9, there I've got 11 number 1s, and I would expect the 14th of the second, yes, that will be in AP 11. Okay, so this is working so far. One last thing for me to do, I need to add these all together, and the way we do that is with sum. So I've got it as sum and I'm going to open the brackets there, and right at the end close the brackets again, Control Shift Enter, and this is now giving me the numbers for the APs that these transactions fall within. Okay, looking good so far. How does this help us on our summary? Well, what we're going to do is over here we want the numbers from the AP above. Now, just so that this becomes bulletproof, I want to actually extract the number from whatever AP has been written above there, just in case somebody decided to go to AP13, or if they deleted one of these columns. If I use the code column to get the column number, that wouldn't necessarily work if a column had been deleted, but if I'm using an extraction from the text above, that will work perfectly well if somebody deletes some of the data. So the way I extract is I'm going to say equals mid, to take from the middle of the text. I'm going to choose from that text. I want to start at number 3, so Mrs. A and the P, and it starts at the next character. And I want to go on for 2 characters, because some of these have 1 and then no other characters, and some of these have 2 digits. So I actually want to do it like that. So close the brackets and enter. Now this is giving me a 1, but it's actually giving me the 1 as text, because it's extracted from a text string. I need to do the same again, the same as I did before, so I'm going to roll all of this up in brackets and multiply by 1. This is now coming up as a number, and the way we know that is previously it was aligned to the left. That tells me that Excel has recognized it as text. If it's aligned to the right, Excel has recognized it as a number. I now drag it across and I get all numbers from 1 to 12. Now in here I want to work out the sum, so equals SUMIFs. My sum range on my data is that one there, but I'm not just going to click to select the range, because when I do so, what it does is it picks up from my transactions table the entire column value. Now yes, I do want that, but actually when I fill this across, what I don't want to do is I don't want this column to fill across as it goes over, as the relative reference moves. So I actually want to use an absolute reference, which is slightly tricky when you're working within tables, but it's still possible. So here equals SUMIFs. My range, I'm going to start off by just clicking in that cell, and I'm now going to lock it. I now do the colon, and I just did Control down to jump down to the bottom of that data and lock it again. When I say lock it, I mean I'm pressing F4 to make it an absolute reference. I'm now going to do my criteria range. My criteria is the cells over here. So again, come up to the top there, F4 to lock it. And you'll notice here it's done something kind of strange. Although I had locked it, it unlocks it and then puts it in as the range again. Sometimes you need to do it more than once. Now this one, go back to my data sheet, Control down and F4 to lock. So now I have my sum range and my criteria range. Now I need to specify the criteria itself, which is the cell above me. Now, the cell above me is not locked because as I copy across, I want it to be these individual cells, but these other references need to be locked, hence the dollar signs. Enter. I now get the sum of all of the transactions in AP1 all the way across to AP12. Now, at a glance we can see there we have 0 transactions in AP7. So let's have a look on our data sheet. Do we have any 7s? And we don't have any transactions in 7. So let's have a look at another one. Here we've got 2 4s, we've got one for 100 and one for 6. So that should give us 106 for period 4. There we are, AP4 106. So this is clearly working. And that's a great way of getting to that first answer. Now the question itself was actually slightly more complex than this, because what it was at a given status date, so for example the 1st of the 7th 16, what is the current AP and what is the sum of all the previous APs but not including the current AP. So first of all, what we can do is we can look and see how we can work out what the current AP is. And to do this, I'm going to go back to the AP list, and I'm actually going to fit in an extra column here which tells me what the AP is, and I've said the status AP because that's the status date. So it's actually not the current AP or the AP of today, it's the AP of the status date. So again, perhaps that should say the status AP. Okay, so in here the status AP is what we're going to use, and I'm going to compare it to that date on the other sheet. So equals, and this is going to be an AND statement, and my date, which is my status date, is greater than or equal to the date, which is the start. See how it's coming up as start, comma, and again my status date is less than or equal to the finish. And let's see if that works. So for some reason they're all showing me false. Let's have a look at that status date. 1st of the 7th 2016. 1st of the 7th 2016 should be coming up in there. So it should be coming up as a 3. So actually, let's have a look at the formula there. Did I get it right? The summary of A2. Well, this would have worked on the very first one, but not on any of the ones lower down, because that needs to be locked. So F4 there, and F4 there. And now it should work. So now it's telling me that yes, it's a true, that one is correct. Now, these falses and trues, again, are not very helpful. What I want to do is I want to have some text in here that I can then use a VLOOKUP on. So I'm simply going to use an if statement. So if all of that is true, I want this to equal, let's say, the header there, status AP. Otherwise, just give me some text, empty text string. So you'll notice that because I edited one of the formulas in a table, it's actually worked and filled the formula down for all of the other cells. So I can see at a glance that is my status date. If I go back to here and I change that to be 12th 11/16, that'll give me a different status date, and that's the status date there. Okay, how can we now use this to get the AP number for our current status date? Well, we just use a VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP. What do we want to look up? We want to look up the word status date. Where do we want to look it up from? Well, we actually want to look it up from our AP list, and we want to look it up from those cells there. Yep. And you'll see how it's gone from status AP to AP, which is status AP to AP. And which column do we want to get the answer from? We want it from 2, and we want an exact match. And it's looking up A1, it's not finding it. I shouldn't have used A1, I should have actually used status AP. And that tells me this date is in AP8. Let's have a check. So 12th 11th, 12th of the 11th is in AP8, and it's the one that's got our status date next to it. Okay, so all of that is working. Now, how do we find the sum of all of the ones up to the end of the previous AP? So if I were to do this manually, I would say equals the sum of AP1 all the way up to AP7, because I don't want it to be AP8, I want it to be the end of the previous AP rather than this one. So that's how I would do it manually, and the answer it gives me 797. Not so simple as that. We want it to change as we change this date. I don't want to have to manually select each time, and the reason was because this actually had to be done across about 30 different sheets, and it would have been a nightmare doing that at the end of each month. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to look up, using that figure there, where we need to fill across to. We're always going to start there, so our sum is going to start from there, so we're going to lock that one, and then it's going to go across to this one here. So let's just do the start bit. In fact, let me use a helper column to actually work something out. So I'm going to work out where this one should give me across to. So it's going to be that cell there. So I want it to go across to G7. So I'm going to use the address function. So it equals the address, and the address that I want, my row number, is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can just type in the 7, and that doesn't need to be locked or anything like that. And my column number, if I want G, that is this number here minus 1. And the last thing it's going to ask me for is, how do I want this to appear? Do I want it as an absolute number or as a relative number? And actually it doesn't make a difference, but I'm going to say as a relative number. And the reason is because that will just simply give me G7 rather than $G, $7. It doesn't actually matter in this instance. Now in here, what I'm going to say is equals the sum, and it's going to be the sum of this cell here, which I'm just going to lock because I always want it to be that cell, up to, let me just go through and do that again, so this one, F4 to lock it, up to, now if I just click on this cell here, it's going to take the sum range of all of those up to there. So I don't actually want up to this cell, I want it up to what's in this cell, and the way I do that is by indirect. So I say indirect of that cell. And that gives me the 797. And again, just to test it, we go up to there, 797. So that's given me the right number. It does look a bit scruffy having a separate cell over here, even if it's a helper cell. Yes, I do know I could move it elsewhere. Much better to actually copy it, come into the formula, look for where you're referring to it, and paste. Now I can do away with that cell completely because it's entirely contained within here. I've got the address within there. But when you're actually building the formula or function in the first instance, it's much easier to use a helper column to build it. Okay, and there we have our answer. First of all, we found out how we could sum up sales within a certain AP, and with those numbers we've achieved them now. I can hide them so that it's not so scruffy. And then we wanted, depending upon a status date, we needed to find out what the status date's AP was, and then add up all of these totals up to the end of the previous AP, not including the ones that this date has passed in the existing AP. Okay, let's have a quick look at doing something. If I type in something in April, so 17th of the 4th, 16, the AP that this is going to be is AP1, and it's going to have no value because it's saying AP1 has nothing. Yeah, so it can't have the sum. So anything that falls in AP1, the sum to the end of the previous AP is not in this year's figures. So let's pick a date later on. So we're going to say the 20th of May, 16. This is, oh sorry, that's in the wrong year. This is now in AP2, and it's given me the sum of everything up to the end of AP1, which is just the 203. So let's try a later on one. So 15th of the 12th, 16. This is in AP9, and it should be giving me the sum of all of these up to and including AP8, which is 852, which is what we've got there. So this is now working perfectly. Slightly more complex than at first glance, because what you think when you look at it is, well, hang on, what I could do is I could just take every transaction which happened before that date and just add them up. But that's not quite what the customer wanted. Some of the transactions there are in the current AP, and therefore I don't want them included. I just want the ones that are completed and signed off as at the end of the AP. Another way of doing this is with a pivot table. Much quicker, much easier to do. We use the same process for getting the current AP, and here's our status date. And all we do here is we create a pivot table, and in here we show the values as a running total in our APs. Yeah. So here we have the accounting period, we have the value, so accounting period or AP, and the values, and we show them as running totals. In there, all we do is an H lookup, so a horizontal lookup for what we have in the cell above. Our H lookup values are from here, and we're looking up that number 9 minus 1, so we're looking up 8 for the AP previous to this. So we're looking over here to number 8, and we're getting the value from down below, so 852. Much quicker, easier way of doing it. Clearly we still have to work out the AP the same as we had to do before, but the actual process of working out the running total is much easier. Okay, very long-winded episode here today. However, I hope it's been useful, and once more, thank you for listening.